Up next, we've got Lyle Shelton. Now, Lyle was the former director of the ACL from 2013 to 2018. He was also one of the leaders of the No campaign at the Australian Marriage Law Postal Survey in 2017. This election, Lyle's leading the Family First Party. Today, Lyle will be talking about family issues such as gender ideologies, males in female sports and private spaces. Lyle, would you like to come to the stage?
Well, thanks very much, Joel, and thanks very much to Ed from Cause and Joel from Turning Point Australia for putting on this amazing event today. And thank you to all those who are watching online. It's wonderful to have people participating in democracy. And I think the reason why we're in the mess we are in as a society is because we haven't had enough participation. And may forums like this and alternative media like this be the herald of something new and fresh. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the big question for this election here in Victoria is who will protect your family from the threat of radical political correctness? And I think the answer to that question is not Dan Andrews and it's not Matthew Guy. As Joel said, I'm involved in the leadership of Family First. I'm not running as a candidate, but I've been involved in the organisation and the rebirth of the party here in Victoria, and it's been a pleasure and a privilege to do so. And we've recently announced a wonderful field of candidates. I'll introduce some of them to you later. We'll be standing candidates in each of the 8 upper house divisions and as many of the lower house electorates as we possibly can. And it's exciting to see the momentum building. I've been asked to speak today on the issue of gender ideologies, issues of women's sport and these associated impediments to our freedom of speech and our freedom of religion that flow from these crazy things. So just a bit of history. This has emanated from this wonderful state of Victoria. You might remember that image there. That came, was one of the original images of the Safe Schools Coalition. Back in about the end of 2014, this came on our radar. I was, as was said, at the Australian Christian Lobby at the time. Other groups were also involved, Family Voice Australia, the National Civic Council, Australian Family Association. We spent a big part of 2015, and of course Bill here in the front row, trying to get the public to understand this teaching that was going on in our schools. And that image there appeared under the Safe Schools banner with a slogan, "Gender is not uniform." And I must admit, I was shocked when I saw that. In fact, I said to my team at the time, that is so extreme, that's not going to go anywhere. Surely this will just be laughed out of town. But by the middle of 2015, we'd discovered that 300 schools around the nation were now running the Safe Schools program. It came onto the public consciousness about a year or so later when a very brave Victorian woman by the name of Chella White went public in the Herald Sun here and news.com. That's Chella there, one of the bravest women in Australia. And it was her going forward talking about this program in her son's school at Frankston High that brought this to the public's attention for the first time in any meaningful way. Of course, the principal of Frankston High during the marriage campaign, as Chella joined our campaign and tried to help explain to people that if we are going to degender marriage, this sort of stuff is only going to get a greater head of steam. And of course, the principal there said it never happened. Well, we know that's a big fat lie, and this is being laced right through our education system from early childhood onwards. Now, this is Kira Bell. If we fast forward a few years, Kira Bell campaigned against her gender clinic in London, the Tavistock Centre, and I'm sure everyone's heard of this, but perhaps some of those watching online have not. That quote there, and I'm sorry to have such an indelicate quote for our audience, but we need to understand just how grave all this is. That quote comes from an expert witness statement that Kira has kindly given to myself because I'm being sued back in my home state of Queensland by 2 drag queens who promote gender fluid ideology, and Kira has kindly provided an expert statement. Kira was 15, 16 years old when the Tavistock Centre put her on puberty blockers. She later, a few years later, went on to have a double mastectomy, and in her expert witness statement, she said, "I realised that I could never be a man, I'm a woman," and she has detransitioned. And as a result of her advocacy and her court cases in the UK, there was a review done by Dr. Hilary Cass, a leading paediatrician in the United Kingdom, and she concluded that these gender clinics were doing harm to children, and the Tavistock Centre was closed in July this year. That's an amazing thing. But Why in the state of Victoria are we finding that we're closing coal mines and closing down baseload electricity, but we're keeping the gender clinics open? It's a big question. The most prominent proponent of gender fluid ideology and the medicalisation of children resides here in the state of Victoria, and that's Dr. Michelle Telfer of the Royal Children's Hospital here in Melbourne. And this is a chilling quote that she gave to a Royal Commission, a parliamentary inquiry, back in 2019. Now, I can't quite read that from here, but I'm going to paraphrase it for you. You can get a screenshot of it if you want to. But she is basically telling the parliamentarians that she doesn't have enough money or enough funding to provide reconstructive surgery to young women who are struggling with their gender identity and might want to change to become boys. And it's basically a pitch for further funds so that she can perform these sort of surgeries, which she calls reconstructive surgery, which really is taking the breasts off a young woman so that she can present as a man. Now, I don't want to belittle anyone's gender confusion or the struggle that goes with that, particularly children, but I think this is quite an horrific thing, and the fact that this is being advocated by someone who's a medical professional running Australia's leading gender clinic here in Melbourne, why that is being put forward, why she sees the need to perform this on minors, as the quote shows, is very, very chilling. So this is a real problem. And I guess the obvious question is, if they've shut down the Tavistock Centre in London for providing similar sort of services, why is Dan Andrews, why is Matthew Guy, why are all the politicians who are funding the gender clinics here in Australia and here in Melbourne, why are they not being asked questions about this? Why is the media not doing its job? Why are politicians not doing its job? They know this is going on. They've got Dr. Cass's review. They know it's caused harm. They know that other countries like Sweden and Finland are walking away and moving towards a more cautionary approach to treating children with gender dysphoria. Yet here in Australia, we've got Dr. Michelle Telford advocating for money so that she can perform double mastectomies on minors. It's chilling stuff. You can go on the internet and find these images. There are a dime a dozen now. It's right there for us to see. One of the other really, Bill's gone through the crimes and misdemeanours of Daniel Andrews, and it's hard to know where to start, and Bill only scratched the surface. But this, to me, is a real clanger, and it flows on from the whole gender fluid ideology issue. Now, this is a screenshot taken from the Victorian Department of Education website, and it says that if a child at school is wanting to transition their gender, so we're talking minors again, and the teachers become aware of it, if the child has confided to the teacher is to hide that information from the parents. Now, teachers shouldn't be hiding any information from parents, full stop. Parents have the right over their children. That's even recognised in international law. Yet here in the state of Victoria, in Dan Andrews' Victoria, and with a silent Liberal Party, we've got that statement on a Victorian Department of Education website that says a child's gender transition should be hidden from their mother and father. The other day I was, as I often do on a Saturday, ringing Family First donors to thank them for their generous contribution to our efforts, and I reached a woman who was living in Darwin in the Northern Territory whose son and daughter live here in Melbourne. And she said to me, this is really personal to me because my grandchild was transitioning at school, and my son and daughter-in-law didn't know about it for at least 6 months. And you could hear her voice quiver on the phone as she was telling me this. This is real. This is not just crazy activists in fringe minor parties going on about this sort of stuff. It's real. And there it is. It's in your grill. It's right there on the Victorian Department of Education website. Now, this is also another aspect. The change and suppression, aka conversion therapy bill, has been mentioned today. This is quite extraordinary because this is a screenshot from the Victorian Equal Opportunities Commission website, and it says there that if someone is experiencing change or suppression practice, even if they are seeking help, it's illegal for someone to render help when asked. Even if you ask for it, is the quote there. Again, this is on the website. They don't even hide this sort of stuff. Now, as we've heard today, a parent, a doctor, a priest, an imam, a counsellor, they can be sent to jail if they try and talk a child out of going off to Dr. Michelle's gender clinic, where she might be put on puberty blockers, just as Kira Bell was as a teenager, and even worse, perhaps if Dr. Michelle Telfer has her way, could have life-altering and irreversible surgery. So there it is. You cannot even try and talk someone out of it. If you see the danger and try and warn them, you can't talk them out of it. If they sense there's danger to themselves and seek your help, you still can't render them that assistance. This is unbelievable stuff. Who would have thought this could ever happen in Australia? Well, if we thought that the Liberal Party might provide some hope against the conversion therapy law that criminalises parents, that criminalises doctors, imams, pastors, counsellors, think again. Matthew Guy is on the public record as saying that he will not amend, change or repeal that conversion therapy bill. Now, that is a shameful thing. There is no hope in the Liberal Party to change that view. Now, yesterday, it appeared on social media, an advertisement from the Liberal Party to the Islamic community, from an Islamic community newspaper, where Matthew Guy said he would look at amending the Equal Opportunities Law, which takes away the freedom of Christian churches, mosques, religious schools to discriminate favourably towards those who share their ethos. Just it's common sense. Now, of course, the law in Victoria prohibits a school, a church, a mosque from discriminating favourably towards those who share their ethos. I mean, that's just obvious. I mean, I don't expect to rock up at the Pride Centre in Victoria and get a job as their media officer, even though I'm qualified in journalism. And you know, I can live with that. You know, I can live with that discrimination. They don't have to employ me. But the law here in Victoria says that if someone rocks up for a job at a Christian school and doesn't share that ethos, then you know that's against the law. Now, Matthew Guy has said that he's going to look at amending that law. Big tick for Matthew Guy, subject to consultation. Now, we all know what's going to happen there, just like Scott Morrison's consultation of the federal religious discrimination bill. Went on for 5 years and still didn't result in any legislation because it becomes a pile-on by the activists who do not tolerate any other group having any freedom. So, tick for Matthew Guy, yeah, he's thinking about partially restoring religious freedom, but he's on the public record as saying he won't overturn the gay conversion therapy law, which makes it a crime for a parent to even pray for their child who's suffering from gender confusion. This is unbelievable stuff, and that's got to change. And that's why we need parties like Family First, like the others here today, to put pressure on the Liberal Party, because they are not living up to the views of Sir Robert Menzies, who would be rolling in his grave if a Victorian leader was suggesting that a parent should go to jail for trying to talk their kid out of going to a gender clinic. Shame. Also, this is a screenshot from Matthew Guy's website. It's a bunch of Liberals at a Pride parade here in Melbourne. The other election promise that Matthew Guy has made is that he is going to fund two lawyers funded by the taxpayer, out of the Pride Centre in St Kilda. Now, what are these lawyers for? Well, they are there to litigate and to go after the Andrew Thorbans of this world, the Christian schools of this world that are simply wanting to uphold the ethos of the parent community. They are looking for activist discrimination cases that they can prosecute through the Equal Opportunities Commission. Matthew Guy is going to fund two more lawyers at your expense to go after people who have a different worldview, who have a different view on human flourishing, on what it means to be male or female, what marriage means, people who transgress the rainbow orthodoxy. They're going to have a couple of lawyers paid for by the taxpayer going after them. And I know this is real. I mentioned my legal case earlier, which that those who are suing me have lawyers that are funded by the LGBT Legal Service in Brisbane. Taxpayer funded, $400,000 you can find in their annual report. My lawyers, they're funded by donations, no government funding at all. Matthew Guy wants to weaponise the legal service here in Melbourne to go after people who have a different worldview. And I think that, again, this is another reason why we've got to have minor parties like ourselves putting pressure on the major parties to do the right thing and to realise that they can't just keep going along with this woke political correctness which is threatening us all. I was asked to talk about the issue of women's sport. Again, I would have loved to have thought that the Liberal Party might have offered us some hope here. I know I'm using a federal example, but as I was asked to talk about this sport issue, the most prominent proponent of trying to save women's sport, of course, has become in recent years Senator Claire Chandler from Tasmania, a very brave Liberal woman, and she has been relentless on this, along with more recently Catherine Deves, Liberal pre-selected candidate in Warringah. Think about the sort of flack that they copped from the Liberals, from the likes of Matt Keane, let alone what they copped from the LGBT lobby. Now, you know, you would have thought it would be no-brainer, but during the election campaign, federal election campaign, just this last May, when the heat came on Scott Morrison, he said the government does not have any plans for that, i.e. a Saving Women's Sports bill, to be a government bill. It's a private member's bill, and I have told you very clearly that my views on such a bill, so I've been up front. That's a little bit of doublespeak there, but what he's saying is that there's not going to be a bill from the Liberal Party to save women's sport. So they're quite happy to let Senator Claire Chandler go out there and make it look like the Liberal Party is doing something. And this is why it's so important that parties like Family First and the others that are represented here today are in this space, because there's so much smoke and mirrors in politics. Yes, there are some very, very good people running for the Liberal Party at this election, and I hope some of them I hope the good ones get elected. But this is what happens. They've got to be able to hold the likes of Peter Dutton, Scott Morrison formerly, Matthew Guy. They've got to be able to hold them to account. It's no good Liberal candidates coming along to forums like this and saying, yeah, we're going to save women's sport, we're going to overturn gay conversion therapy laws, we're going to restore freedom of speech and freedom of religion, and put up private members' bill, only to find that when the heat comes on their leader, they walk away from it. And this is Scott Morrison, supposedly a Christian. Well, he is a Christian. I shouldn't say supposedly. He is. But he's one who played his politics in a very pragmatic way, and of course was a huge disappointment. Well, this comes to the Family First team. That's 5 of the 8 lead upper house candidates for the Legislative Council that we'll be running. We'll be announcing another 3 very shortly. Lee Jones, who you might have seen in the media last week, is our lead candidate. He's a corporate executive. He has his own Andrew Thorburn type story, which I hope he has the opportunity to talk about during the course of this campaign, where he was dismissed from a job he loved about 7 years ago, before this even came on people's radar. This is personal for our people. We've got Imad Hermiz up in Northern Metropolitan, Dean Cronkright down in Western, and Michael White up in Northern Regional. So these are top quality people. Of course, Alistair Cameron in North Eastern Metropolitan. And this is a team that won't back down. This is the team that's going to get in the way of the political correctness that threatens every family in Victoria. And that's the question. Who will protect your family from the threat of radical political correctness? That's the question that people need to ask as they go into the ballot box. And I'd encourage everyone, if you'd like to know more about Family First, if you'd like to volunteer, if you'd like to get involved, if you'd like to have a look at our policies, you can go to familyfirstparty.org.au. And I'd encourage everyone to be participants in this election. Let's not sit on the sidelines. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lyle. That was very moving. I am looking forward to putting that segment out. I think it's going to be really moving, and I think there's a lot of mothers out there that just find that butchery disgusting, and they will be sharing that around to their circles.